ultimately, let's be honest, like it really does totally suck, the end. But as the idea of it can lead us towards living a more rich, full, intention-filled life, it's because we are finite that things matter. It's because there's going to be a literal deadline that we maybe want to take action on some of our dreams. It's too bad we need it, and I've always found that to be a little chink in the armor of humanity, that we really need to be motivated by sometimes what is negative rather than just what is positive. But hey, if the truth is there and we can leverage it, I will hang out with the Grim Reaper all day in order to let it motivate me to get on with it. My mom at 58 had the nerve to go and die of a heart attack. I love her and miss her, but cleaning up her place, I was exposed to I call it the land of dormant intentions, because she died with so many dreams stuffed inside of her. All the business plans, all the manuscripts, all the ideas, all the things, and she just didn't do anything. She didn't execute. But the biggest kicker for me when she died was...
Jodi, thank you so much for being here today.
Oh, Scott, thank you so much for having me and for being willing to talk about our mortality math. I love that you're game.
Yeah, so it's really funny. This will set us up perfectly. I was in California. I just told you I was in San Diego, and I had a little spot on my head, and my wife says to me, I'm bald for those that are only listening, and my wife says you have to get it checked, and I don't think anything of it, and my assistant and my wife collude together. They make an appointment, so the day that I get back, I have this thing checked. I walk in to the doctor's office and the dermatologist, and they're like, okay, we're going to go ahead and slice that thing off and send it off for a biopsy. It's probably fine, but it's precancerous for sure. We have to figure out, if it's actually cancer. And I'm like, oh, okay, that was great. I've never had anything. I have olive complexion skin. I'd never had anything on my skin.
Yeah.
But I arrived back home having spent, 30 minutes in a doctor's office where they tell you, oh, you could have skin cancer, which is very... not that it's impactful to people that have lost their lives over it, but it's not like the end of the world. It's very treatable. And I open my Amazon box and your book arrives. You only die once, how to make it to the end with no regrets. And that was the day that your book arrived at my house. And so I said, oh, God must be giving me a sign. I'm going to read this. And so I always get my guest books. I always buy them. Anything they're doing, I want to be a part of. I want to learn from. But this was so funny because I faced it, and this is what happened.
Well, from now on, I'm going to call it melanoma math. That's what we're going to do. We're going to rename it for you. And can we just jump to the end? I'm assuming it's a good ending for your head.
Oh yeah, everything's fine. Yeah,
Okay.
I actually yesterday I just got a. It's fine. They have to freeze off the remainder, and I should be good. So
okay, good.
Whatever. It's no big deal.
Get back out there in the sun, buddy. Get out there. Get living.
I'm all about the sun and that vitamin D. So
Amen.
Anyway, I came home and I started working through your book, and I want you to talk to the readers and the listeners about why you wanted to write this book. I think that's the great starting point, is your why behind setting this up.
Ooh, okay. Well, thanks for asking. Well, aside from always being fascinated by the fact that, oh my gosh, we're all going to die. Isn't that weird? First of all, it's so funny. Your podcast is a great example. You're talking about optimizing life, high performance, and ultimately that's what I talk about too, but just in a roundabout way. And then we're all totally going to reach to an end, and we all know it, and we don't talk about it. And yet I've always been fascinated by the absurdity of it. So that's just an undercurrent. And then my mom at 58 had the nerve to go and die of a heart attack. And I say it flippantly just because I've processed it by now, but I love her and miss her. But the biggest kicker for me when she died was cleaning up her place, because I was exposed to I call it the land of dormant intentions, because she died with so many dreams stuffed inside of her. All the business plans, all the manuscripts, all the ideas, all the things. And I knew about many of them because we would chat, and I knew she wanted to start, her dog biscuit business. That was one of many. And she just didn't do anything. She didn't execute. And that for me was this splash of cold water in the face of, okay, honey bunny, this apple don't fall too far from the tree. Because I am I was at the time working in a corporate job that I was excited about, but my excitement was waning. And I needed to have a little bit of like a motivation about how do I get on with my own dreams. So I studied this topic through the Master of Applied Positive Psychology program at University of Pennsylvania, and I didn't know that they would even let me research death, because I was like, wait, does positive psychology count if we're talking about death? Totally, it does. It's the whole part of the experience of life. And then once I realized, oh my God, there's all this research behind it, and now I can talk about it with credibility. I'm not just a total weirdo. Well, now just like try and stop me.
That's awesome. And so as you're in the College of Positive Psychology, you're surrounded by this different way of thinking, which I love. I love the whole Seligman mentality and like everything that goes with positive psychology. It seems like such a no-brainer, but why did it take so long for us to actually have like a school, a focus, a training? Like, it's crazy. But what you've done is you've added a positive spin to death. That's what you've done. You've actually made us realize that it's not all bad.
Well, ultimately, let's be honest. It really does totally suck, the end. But as the idea of it, can that be what can lead us towards living a more rich, full, intention-filled life? Well, that answer, of course, is going to be yes. Because when we don't pay attention to it, and we like to do this thing where we just change the subject, don't want to talk about it, don't want to think about it, we don't even want to do a freaking will. But then we're robbing ourselves of this chance to actually tune into the fact that it's because we are finite that things matter. It's because there's going to be a literal deadline that we maybe want to take action on some of our dreams, unlike my dear mom. So we it's too bad we need it. And I've always found that to be a little chink in the armor of humanity, that we really need to be motivated by sometimes what is negative rather than just what is positive. But hey, if the truth is there and we can leverage it, I will hang out with the Grim Reaper all day in order to let it motivate me to get on with it.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think something happened in my 40s that as I'm 46 now, and I think that sometime between like 38 and 42, there was this major shift in my entire ideology, thought process, looking back on everything. I had a peace, but I also like where I was good. Like I'm good. I never am fearful of death, but I definitely was like, hey, I need to make more out of the moments that I have, because I'm flying into this city. I'm going to this meeting. I'm not having any time to see how cool this city is or this place is. Like, there's a lot of places I've been and I've never actually been there. Like I've flown in, I've flown out. Some places I've flown in and met in the airport and flown out. And these are things that I wanted to change. And so I think some of it is just an awareness. It's much like in life, how I use the life tool. I use it to create an awareness in and around what I'm doing well, what I'm not doing so well, and how to actually execute a better way.
Oh, okay. We are kindred spirits, because your whole point about awareness, in my book, I start off with this pre-mortem. It's like, oh, let's get you looking at you. Let's get you looking at your life right now. What are you loving? What's flatlined? Where are the areas? Like, what do you want more of? Because in honesty, you're a step ahead. It took you a beat, because it sounded like you were doing the in and out of the cities as one example. And then you clued into, wait a minute, I want to experience these cities. These are moments in my life that I could actually savor and then remember later. So post-savor, and I can suck the marrow out of the bone. We'll choose all the metaphors today. And yet not all of us have even stopped to fathom, what would be cool. Or wait, where are the opportunities in my life? Where are my fly in, fly out moments that I could actually pay attention to? So that's the pre-mortem idea. It's like you said, becoming aware. What do I want more of or less of, or what might actually delight me and make me feel like when I get to the end, man, I did this thing justice. We're never going to do it perfectly, but that you feel like, I don't know, the expression is coming to me lately, I'm good to go.
Yeah.
When you get to the end, you're like, I did it. I did the things. I stopped and I visited Tennessee. I didn't just fly in and fly out.
Right. No, and you know what? I think you kind of go through iterations or cycles in life. And so when you're reading a book like yours, you do start to think of when you changed your logic. So if I go to my early days in my 20s, it was all about seeing anything because I didn't grow up traveling. I didn't grow up doing anything. And so it was really about experiencing everything at this very high frequency.
Yep.
And then you get into the mundane years where you think that that's the boring time, but it's actually the time that you think most of in your life that you love the most. It's the moments with your kids. It's the first walking and the first soccer practices, and you're home a lot more, but you're busy, so busy that you don't know what's happening. And then you kind of come out of that, which is where I was describing, and you just have this high frequency again. You're like, wait, I'm losing control of the things that I remembered so well when I was young. And now I need to go back and do these things. And so I went through your exercises and I found them to be, and I very rarely do this, which I think is interesting. I very rarely open a book and I'm like, oh, this is great. I'm going to go through these exercises. But yours,
do it.
Yeah, but your questions were really good. And they did make you think, hey, where am I killing it? Where do I need to adjust?
Yeah.
How can, it's just another way to think, which I found very interesting.
Oh, well, I'm pleased to hear that. And can I also just say that what you were describing about how you evolve over the years, your experience, which mimics many, you are the perfect case study for what researchers have come up with a theory, and it is a mouthful, socio-emotional selectivity theory, which is just a very syllabic way to say that our values change over time based on our perception of time, the horizons ahead of us. So this all has to do with that perception of, oh, I have now how many Mondays left? Like I know I have 1,814, okay? You said when you got to be like 38 to 40 something, you kind of got this little change. You're so right. In our younger years, we value knowledge acquisition, novelty, drinking from the fire hose of life, like all the things. Now, some of us still value that and we'll do that till the day we die. Awesome, whatever, float your boat. But as we age and we literally start to see the horizon of like the cemetery on the horizon, like, you know, when you're young, you're naive and you're like, yeah, whatever. It's almost like you're invincible, even though you know rationally you're going to die. But now you're like, wait a minute, like now I can count my Mondays and they are dwindling and you see it. Then researchers are clear that your values do tend to shift more towards connection with other people, more of a sense of meaning. And for many that does link to spirituality. It doesn't have to, but that sense of more like a poignancy. And often for many people, it's about a desire to give back. So not everyone follows that path, but it sounds like you sure are the poster boy. I love it.
I'm following that path. I mean, everything I do today is about impact. It's not just about impact in our family. It's about impact in the community, impact in our church, whatever it is that we're involved in.
Yeah.
That's something that I want to be focusing on. And I think that there is that cycle, but it's a really natural cycle too. I mean, sometimes you get so busy living your everyday life that you're not actually taking the time out to assess. And what you're talking about when we talk about awareness is you're talking about just taking a few minutes occasionally and saying, hey, what's coming up in this coming week, and where can I have moments that I really want to be present, and I want to make sure that I'm taking a few minutes for myself or for my wife or for whatever it may be.
Mm-hmm. I like the way you put that. And as you would have noticed, you know, one of the 9,712 questions in the book would have been around something that seems simple but can stump people, like what makes you happy? And like what are the things that make you feel most alive? So for busy, successful adults, high performers, we've lost the plot because we're so busy focusing on the big goal, the big thing. It's like the career move, or it could be immersed in like a busy family life or whatnot. But we've lost this sort of broader picture about, oh yeah, me, not my team at work, not the freaking toddler on the rug, like, or the cat or whatever. What makes me happy? And my challenge for us is to come up with a list that it acts as your menu of options for when you have even like 20 minutes between meetings. This is always a litmus test for me. It's like, I am not always willing to walk the talk. I am an enormous hypocrite. I need all the work that I write about. I swear to God, I'm writing it for me because I need to be reminded to live daily. Because I will always go to the default of answering emails, of being productive, of being one or two dimensional, just focusing on work. And that can be really amazing. And yet you miss out on a lot of life, potentially. So if you have a list, back to awareness, and you're super clear on these are the things that light me up, these are the things, these are the hobbies that when I do them, I lose track of time. Like, you get into flow. Or this is the thing that I really look forward to doing. Or these are the simple pleasures that I actually get a lot out of. A lot of people will say it has something to do with just sitting outside and having, maybe having their lunch outside. Or it's spending time, grooming their dog. Or it's something that's simple, which I love. Because by the way, there's this idea that like to live this astonishingly alive life, I call it, that it's got to take a lot of dough and a lot of time. And, you need to be some kind of high roller to do it all. And like, oh, no. Some of the very happiest, joie de vivre people I know have like, they can't, they're not making a ton of money and they're managing their lives on like 2 weeks off of work a year, and they're lively. And why is that? Because they know what makes them tick and what makes them feel alive, and they make time for it.
Yeah, it's finding life in the moments of every day, not living for a moment that will come one day.
Yeah.
Like if you think about that, I feel like that's how so many people live. They live for the moment that may come one day, instead of finding those moments in everyday life where you're just like, sometimes you have to sit back and just smile that, oh, this is awesome. I'm in a really good spot right now.
Totally. Well, can I ask you, like, what's an example in your life of something that is seemingly just like cheap and cheerful or sweet and simple that you just know, oh my gosh, when I do it, it's easy, but I just love it.
So I think as we were talking a few minutes ago, I was thinking of during COVID, I have always gone to concerts, to the point where I would go to concerts as I got older. My wife and I like most of the same music, but as we got older, we were like, I was bringing her to shows that she didn't care about, and I don't like that either. That actually is worse. So, so I started doing, yeah, it's the worst. It's the worst. But that's fine because I started going to things alone. And during COVID, I didn't realize how much I missed going to see live music, and how when I'm watching a band or whoever it may be, I'm completely present. I know what I'm there. I'm enjoying myself. It's something I've been doing since I was a teenager, and it makes me feel alive. And so as I thought about that, I actually made a list during that time of all the people I was going to see. And as soon as they launched their shows, I booked. I didn't care where they were going. I started going to all of them. And so that's an example of something that is very simple, and it's something we take for granted, but when it's taken away, it becomes drastic.
Oh, okay. First of all, yeah. So this is back to that scarcity idea. I got to track this all the way back over to death. Because like when you couldn't do it, you realized how much you missed it and wanted it. And so same thing, with our lives, they will not be there at some point. Your phrasing even is just so up my alley. It's like that you said music makes you feel alive. And if all of us right now had to stop and write a list, and I don't care how many bullet points there are, but what would be the things, and maybe you could rank order them, but here's where I find, and it's through my research and then working with workshops and doing stuff with groups, when asked about what's an example of something that makes you feel, I'm going to give you an example from a workshop I did. Everybody did it and they kind of sat at their tables and they were talking and thinking about it, and there was so much energy in the room, right? Because when you're talking about makes you feel alive, you can't not get excited about it. One guy raises his hand to contribute after, and he's like, doing improv makes me feel them. Like I've never felt better than when everyone was like, oh, great. Whatever his name was, Greg, good for you. And the question, of course, that I asked, because I'm a bit of a dick and I knew I was going to get there. I want to make a point. I'm like, great. Like when was the last time you did it? And his answer, this one was actually like this. He was almost a ringer for the point I wanted to make. And it was sad. He's like, oh, because I haven't done it in like 10 years. Do we not want to just all take this guy by the hand to a fucking improv class?
Right.
And like
right.
go, like, but this happens to many of us. Like, I come alive when I do art. I don't do art because I only do art when I have a reason. Like if we're moving and I want to have art for a new wall, but otherwise I'm missing the chance to feel alive. And so this to me is like a real antenna up moment of like, dude, like what if you could just identify it and then find it? Here's the thing. Time won't find you. We know this. You have to make the time to say, okay, if whitewater rafting floats your boat, I get it, floats your raft, then go book, like when are you going to book that trip so you feel like you're doing it? If improv makes you feel alive, when can you put it in the calendar? If a concert makes you feel, what can I ask you? Do you have a concert in the books?
I mean, who am I going to see next? I can't remember.
Or anybody that is
I mean, I love the Avett Brothers. I saw if going back to my favorite moment, I actually had I run a big wine festival in Chesapeake, and so when coming out of COVID, having an event, everybody was hesitant to host their event, and everyone had to cancel. And ours is 100% for charity, so a lot of charities were struggling those years, and so there's a festival called Floyd Fest out in Floyd, Virginia, which is way in the country in Southwest Virginia. And the guy that started it, I guess, came out and said, "Hey, we're going to have it." And let's say it was in August. I don't remember exactly when it is, but it was definitely early and one of the first festivals in the country to come back. So I called the guy. I said, "Not only do I want to come, but I want to sponsor it. How can I help you be a part of it?" And I did a sponsorship. And I went out there, and my sister actually came with me. And I can still remember listening to the Avett Brothers. It was 10 o'clock at night. It had rained for 2 straight hours, but it stopped raining. The sky was lit up with stars. There was a crisp feeling to the air, in which you don't feel in August or September in Virginia Beach area, but you feel it out in the mountains. And it was just, the music was beautiful. The experience was great. And I think that's it was the moment that I realized, hey, this really was missing. It wasn't that I didn't realize it was missing, but this is the feeling that I love. And I just, and you can feel that. So I mean, I love everything from Dave Matthews Band to just about Pearl Jam. I can listen to anything old, anything new. I haven't seen Noah Khan. I want to go see him. He's brand new, but I think he's super good. So this is how I like to learn.
And by the way, the way you just described your memory, in positive psychology, there's a lot of talk about the act of savoring. And back to temporal scarcity, there's actually a temporal aspect to savoring. You savor things that happened, which is what you just did beautifully. You just recounted a memory that really was special for you, and that we underestimate what it takes to rig our well-being. And I'm just interested in what are all the hacks? What are all the ways that we can rig it just to be a little bit happier in the next 20 minutes? Because that's all our lives are, just increments stitched together of moments to moments, right?
Right.
You remembering and talking about the air and talking about the rain and the feeling on your feet, I bet, and all the feelings you have as a part of it. That exercise of savoring from the past is part of it. And the more we can do of that, like a quick cheat. I mean, our phones are usually seen as evil, but you could go back and look at the photos on your phone to bring back good memories. There's savoring the moment, which is really being immersed, which is when you're at the concert, being look while I'm here, wow, I can smell whatever the smell is, and I can hear this and listen to the bass. And then same thing about savoring into the future, which to me, back to the idea about, making the most of the time we have. Do we all have something to look forward to in our calendar a week from now, a month from now, and a year from now? And if we do that every single, week, month, year of our lives, where we can always say that about our calendar, and it doesn't have to be fancy stuff. Concerts for some people are fancy. Sometimes it could even just be that you're really looking forward to, having a brunch with friends on Saturday, or you're going to look forward to making that special, Thai meal that you brought the recipe ingredients for. Or it could be that you're looking forward to your, yacht trip around the world, whatever it is.
As big or as small as you want it to be. I mean, for me, the mundane thing I love is watching my kids play soccer. And so I would find myself looking forward to that stuff. And there's simple things, but I think we have to have that frequency. Yeah. What a lot of people lack is they don't tune in to the right frequency. They're tuning into all the things they're missing. They're not tuning into all the things that they have and the things they get to do. And what you talk about here is there's a lot of near-death experiences, and people come back and they have this perspective. I never understood how much my mom loved me, but she used to leave me these notes. I never understood, you have a perspective that's different. I have one more point, and I've talked about this on my podcast before. We dropped my youngest son off at a soccer academy 3.5, 4 hours away. And, I was going through this huge deal in my business, and all these great, enormous things were going on. And as I drove home, the only thing I could think about was our family, was nothing else mattered. But Is he going to be good? How are my wife and I going to deal with it? What are we going to do next year when our oldest son goes to college? Like all the things that were so important rush up to the top because perspective gives us that, right? And you don't realize how much you love something until you have a moment of loss or you have a close moment of potential loss. And I think you highlight that perfectly in the book.
Thanks for setting that up. And your example is a really good one. Even just the notion about you're that many hours away from your son for a while and recognizing that perspective. I call them wake-up calls, and psychologists, I love the phrase they've used. They call them roars of awakening. If someone's had a brush with death. And, it could be something as seemingly simple as, a sunspot on your head, which could be or may not be melanoma. For other people, it's that they really navigated a tough diagnosis or a car accident, or who knows, maybe they did literally flatline on the table. Research is so clear, and I'm so fascinated by it because I want us all to catch this sort of side effect, which is they see with such clarity what they almost lost in ways that we're just walking around totally taking it for granted because that's what we're wired to do. And they've got that. Like I think about Christia. She was a dear client of mine at 42, had cancer for the third time, breast cancer. And I'll never forget, and this is our last session together, she was telling me about how she was really reveling in the mundane moments. Back to your word about mundane, because I like the point of it. And I'm like, okay, that sounds fascinating. Tell me more. So she's like, I'm just walking. She goes, I don't know. I'm just walking around Home Depot looking for light bulbs. And I am just so reveling in being there. And here I am, of course, like that to me is an example of a nightmare come true. But talk about flicking a switch. Talk about, like you said, the best way of putting it, being on the right wavelength, channel. Like we're all just walking around taking these things for granted. She talked also about how we actually came up with a bullet point list of things that she was enjoying in life at that point. One of them was walking to the grocery store and getting an ice cream bar and then walking home. Like, kind of like you do that when you're a kid. And like, we could all do that. Maybe we have to like drive to the grocery store. Not all of us can walk. She lived downtown Chicago. But these are the mundane moments that like this is where life is getting lived. And are we, the question is, are our eyes open to it or not? And if we tuned in even 15% more to just the beauty of the mundane, what we might be grateful for and what that might do for us, I think it's astounding.
Well, and obviously research shows that it's better to have these wake-up calls prior to the fact that you end up in a ditch and you almost die. And it's amazing how much better life becomes when you're focused on it. And I was telling you a little bit about love, impact, faith, and energy in the beginning of the pre-start to this. And what's interesting is that's always been my tool for exactly what you talk about in this book. So every time I've laid out goals, every time I felt like, the high performer is always imbalanced. And so the first part of your life, you're like, oh, I got to get balance. I'm so out of balance. I need to get balance. Well, if you're doing any damn thing worth anything, you're going to be imbalanced. If you're writing this book, you're going to be putting everything you've got into making sure that the blurbs are as badass as yours are. I mean, Arthur Brooks and, I read Daniel Pink. It's not like you worked your butt off to get these things done. And it sounds so small, but it's so big when you're doing it and you get overwhelmed. And you get out of whack and something in your life is not clicking in the right way. A lot of times it's our health. A lot of times it's our family. It could be anything. I use that tool to constantly assess where I'm at, where I'm struggling, what I need to do better in, and then prioritize between them. And so that's allowed me to maybe have the moment without your client getting the ice cream. If I go into the grocery store, sometimes I'm like, man, I really like going into the grocery store because I never do it. And then I find myself going up and down all the aisles because I don't know what's there. I don't even know where anything is. And I can't, my wife doesn't even go anymore. She gets everything delivered. It just comes to our house. And so I walk in and I'm like, this is kind of cool. what
kind of a delight.
what coffees do they have in this place? I don't even know.
Yeah.
So, but it's just enjoying those little moments that become so valuable. And
Yeah.
how do we focus more on them? How do we get ourselves conditioned if we're not there? What can people do to get themselves in a better space for that?
Yeah, I always recommend counting Mondays. It's always the starting point. Always, 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 and it'll never not be for me. So having the ability to count how many Mondays you have left will provide the anchor point of, oh, right, time is ticking down. And that often creates a more of an impetus to take action on the bigger things. But I think that having daily reminders can be helpful. I'm a fan of having all the little visual cues and clues. I've got skulls everywhere. Talking about it with your family and friends can be really useful. I think that making it a daily practice where you're aware, you are looking at even the things that are memento mori reminders. So memento mori, is the Latin phrase that means remember we must die. And it's an ancient practice and tradition that, they would paint still lifes of things to remind us. Like if you look at your bouquet of flowers, like I encourage people, like you will never look at flowers the same again, because while they're sitting on your dining room table, 2 days from now, 3 days from now, 6 days from now, they're dying, and let that be the reminder for yourself. Hourglasses, even your watch. I'm looking at, the pictures of your family, if you have them up on the wall that have passed, like let that be the reminder of how temporary we are. So having that kind of consistent mind frame, and just to be super clear, this isn't like a pity party morbid endeavor about how, wow, our fate is really sucks to be us. It's just an honest assessment of like, oh, wow, yeah, that is too bad that I won't get to live, forever. But actually, I would argue that wouldn't be that great either. So keep your finger on the pulse of the temporary nature. That's the best way. And then go and do the deathbed regret exercise. This to me can get us. This doesn't help us appreciate the mundane. That's just a gratitude practice. And I think you can do that by just filling out a gratitude journal every day. And if people haven't done that for at least 2 weeks of their life, then wow, there's so much potential there. But the deathbed regret, it's an old fashioned, we've all done it. But I recommend think about the things that you would regret not doing when you're on your deathbed. So let's dismiss the regrets of commission, which are the regrets of the actions you took that you wished you hadn't. Whatever, who cares? That's water under the bridge. I'm more interested in the regrets about the path you didn't take, the coulda, shoulda, wouldas. Like, oh man, like I never started that business. Or I wished I'd asked her out. Or I, never learned how to speak Lithuanian. Or whatever it is for you. And then you go, well, eureka, like I'm not dead yet. And now I have a choice, and I call them pregrets. Because they're beforehand, like they're regrets in the making, and you can still course correct for them if you want to. You may be like, yeah, actually, upon further review, I don't really want to speak Lithuanian. All right, but do you want to start that business? Because if you would regret it on your deathbed, like that's to me back what motivated me with my mom dying with regrets. It's like we get so much choice in our remaining Mondays. We have so much agency. We're scared. Let's all just admit it. It's scary to embark upon a dream that may not deliver. But don't you want to get to the end and feel like you gave it a go, even if it wasn't super successful, however you define that, than to have gotten to the end and felt like, oh, the life unlived is the thing that haunts us and actually makes us afraid of death, is the fear of leaving life on the table. And man, when we realize life's finite and that we realize we have dreams, why would we not take action on them?
Yeah, and it also helps you prioritize. I mean, the thing that most people struggle with is prioritization. I want to go back, and I'm going to come right back to the Mondays, but one of the things that we were talking about where you have to prioritize and actually make time to do the things, the wake up calls, the concerts, the things that make you feel alive. So many people let so many people keep them from doing those things. Yeah. So what I mean by that is maybe this guy didn't do improv because his wife didn't like that improv was at 8:00 at night on a Wednesday. And so he stopped doing it when they had young kids, and he never went back to go do it again. And so in his brain, he's frustrated that his wife is the reason he never did improv again. But the reality is he's the reason that he never did improv again. And so so many times in our lives, I think we look for the barriers, for the challenges, for the things that are in the way, and they become excuses. Yeah. And I just went to Europe a couple of months ago with one of my best friends. My wife and I were supposed to go. She couldn't go because of a challenge in her family. Her father was going through a major cancer treatment, and she was the lead on taking care of it. And instead of not going, I went, and it felt a little uncomfortable. It felt like I was, I had to explain it to everybody why I was going to, Europe because number one, people don't, when you say you're going to Europe, a lot of people are like, wow, that must be nice. And then you say you're going without your spouse. They're like, what are you doing? Why are you doing that? So, but it's a perfect example of something that I was like, I love to travel. I'm going to do these things, and we're going to do them together, but we're also not going to do things that are, when barriers are presented, find the way or the path forward is what I'm saying. Yeah.
I liked how in my mind, you've opened up a couple different pathways. One is that, I do believe that we are our own kind of entertainment directors of our lives. We're responsible for, and it doesn't always have to be entertainment. Like I talk about, it's important to have a wide life with vitality and fun, which is traditionally the cool stuff like, the travel, the tasting menus, all the things. But then there's also living deeper with meaning. And so you could also think, oh gosh, I don't want to go and do that, read to kids program, because then I'm going to leave my wife at home on Thursday nights also. That's a problem. I think we do it's realistic. So I just want to acknowledge, sometimes it might be really inconvenient for someone else if you start living like you mean it. And that is something that is going to take some coordination and collaboration. And not everybody is going to love that. And I think that that's where sometimes we have to take just small steps. It might mean like, hey, honey, I know we usually have this routine on Saturdays. Would it be okay if I took Saturday morning off to write? I want to just go to that coffee shop and is that going to put a wrench in the usual routine? And is it maybe worth it just for you to be able to get that time? And the first 4 times, will you be riddled and racked with guilt while you're doing your thing on the, yeah. And you keep, you keep doing it. And you keep showing yourself, because here's where I do think we have to, this is true of psychology, we have to learn our new identities and kind of prove to ourselves that I'm the kind of person who does make time for herself in this instance, or I'm the kind of person who finds a way to arrange with his wife that I can do a Europe trip. And chances are, it might have been inconvenient, but you can arrange things. And can you also live with, this is one of the things I find to be uncomfortable about putting up boundaries in life also, saying no, is that it inherently means that you may disappoint somebody. But if it's something that matters to you, then in a way you're living an inauthentic life if you're not doing as much as you might want to do by not traveling and thwarting that goal or dream. So number one, I think it's about understanding, not to say no one else is looking out for you because it's a jaded world. I don't mean that, but you do need to take a stand for you. They will require a little bit of discomfort, and it will require some probably awkward conversations. But in saying, hey, honey, it could be like, I just listened to the High Performance Life podcast, and it kind of got me thinking a little bit about how much I do miss traveling with my girlfriends. And, I would love to be able to kind of find a way to orchestrate our vacation calendars where you and I do a romantic trip together and with the kids. But I'd also love to go with Mitzi and Bitsy to Prague. And, would that be, what do you think about that? If I was to just, build that in. And if someone says no, well, then you divorce them immediately.
Yeah, I know. I think the thing that's so important is it's way easier to say no in those moments. I had to self-assess in that moment. Was I being selfish? Should I stay? And then I started to go, well, what am I going to do? I'm not changing anything. I'm going to go to work every day. I'm going to come home every day. And you have to go through that checklist. Am I impacting someone negatively? Am I not? If I went through the checklist that was positive and we come out on the other end of positivity, it's not selfish and it's not something that should be impacting, you're actually investing in yourself. And when you love yourself, people tend to love you more, not less. So you're a better person to be around. You're happier. I found another great example is I have a morning routine. I do a morning routine every day. I'm a better father. I'm a better husband. I'm a better friend. I'm a better boss when that morning routine is completed.
Yeah.
So we know that these are the things that you have to do. As you learn, you get to a point where I think it's about execution.
Yeah. You've made a good point too about you're better for other people when you're good with you. I think even as like as a parent and as a leader, like in roles we play in life where other people are watching us, and it doesn't even need to be that you are the boss of someone, either a child or an employee. It could be that it's like you could be a role model for friends. Because like, I'll give you an example. My husband and I moved most of the year to Palm Springs 2 years ago. And the number of my friends or, clients or whomever were like, whoa, like we've always wanted to make a move. And it was like their minds exploded, like you can do that. And trust me, I mean, my husband and I talked about moving for a very long time from the cold Chicago, but it was one of those, like, you get to be, so I know friends now who are like, well, I think we're going to plan our move. When the kids get into college, we're going to plan our move to go to Portland. And that is like, you can help show other people how it's possible to live the life you've dreamt of. So that's number one. And I want to go back to something else that you were talking about when I was saying, like, you cracked open this idea about some of our things that hold us back. So yes, we might inconvenience other people, but can we talk about the big elephant in the room? And no, it's not the Grim Reaper for once. It is the fear that we're just sort of chicken shit, like in the way that you did talk about how we will see a lot of our barriers as excuses. Like, I don't have time. Work is so busy. Work's always going to be busy. If you're doing something right, it's always going to be busy, right? Or I'm going to wait till retirement. Don't even mess with me. If anybody says those words, sometimes it's valid, but usually it scares the crap out of me because it means we're just going to defer our existence. So I think most of it, though, is about there's something I want to do. It might be a goal that I want to undertake, but I'm scared. And we get scared about stuff that sometimes just seems to other people like, why would you be afraid of that? Like, there's a woman I know, she was at a workshop that I just did last week. And she was saying she really wanted to go and take, it was like an intro to sketch class in her town. She wanted to go with her teenage daughter. It was 8 weeks. And she was like, she'd been wondering about it for a long time. You know how sometimes we have to like muster up the courage to like, and she was like, I've just been thinking about this, and I see it comes every fall and every spring, and I just, we walk by it at night, and it's in her little neighborhood, and she's just not pulling the trigger, right? Now, fortunately, success story in my workshop, she like committed to registering for the sketch class, but it was like when we unpacked it, because we used her as an example in the group, she's like, I don't know, I feel like if I go, like I'm kind of afraid, I don't know how to sketch. I'm like, but isn't that the purpose of the class, is to learn how to sketch?
Right.
No, but I don't know how, like, other people are going to know. She was afraid of looking like an idiot. Human
Fear
basic.
Of failure. Fear of failure.
And so all these things, not all of them, but many of them are either they represent a risk that we might take to look like an idiot or get rejected. If I write the book and I send it out and no one buys it, am I going to be able to handle myself? Well, would you rather handle yourself on your deathbed if you had a book inside you that you never even tried to write and send out? That would be a greater issue, I would think, to grapple with in the afterlife or wherever you're going or whatever. Is it better to have, was Elizabeth Barrett Browning, it's better to have loved and lost than never to have loved at all? I'm going to bastardize her work and say it's better to have lived and failed or lost and fucked up than never who have lived at all, right?
Right.
Isn't that better?
Right. I mean, it is better. First of all, failure teaches us so many lessons. I've learned my best lessons through things I have not been successful at or been challenged at. And when you come through those things, that's when you know you're living. It's like running that extra mile after you felt like you had nothing left in the tank. When you do that and you finish it, you are alive. And I think people have I think they have a self-worth issue too. I think a lot of people lose value in themselves and they struggle to define why they deserve something. They don't do that class, and what they tell you in the workshop or what they tell themselves is that, oh, well, I just don't know. But inside, a lot of times they're saying, I'm not worth it. I'm not worth investing this time, or I shouldn't take this time for myself. And the reality is, that's a really big challenge, and your book kind of walks through at least helping people become aware again. We'll use the awareness word, aware of maybe some old thinking washing out the old thinking and coming in with some new thinking. And the last point I'm going to make, and I'll stop because I know you have something to add, but the last point I'll make is I think in relationships, you get into old habits, and a lot of times when you're married a long time, there are things that were important or frustrating or challenging things that men and women went through when they were in their 20s or their 30s that 15, 20 years later, people are still not doing because they think their spouse may be impacted by something that they did when they were 27. You know, and it's so interesting to me how we get caught and lost in the old world. Like there's a reboot that happens. It shouldn't go back more than like 3 to 5 years. And if it's going back 15 to 20, you got to change it. It's time to change it.
Oh, that's such a cool point. Yeah, you could rewrite the script because that might not even be a script that they're following anymore. Yeah, I love that. I love that. Good insight.
And by the way, I do these things. I feel like my wife and I sometimes do these things where we're like asking permission for things that we needed to do when the kids were really young. Yeah. And there was a reliance issue on one person versus the other. Or when I was traveling, I always felt bad because I'd be gone and I know that's going to be challenging and all the roles that we share. And then it got to the point where I was traveling and I'm like, hey, I'm going to be gone a couple. Do you not care? Is it not like it's not, that's not real. Of course she cares. But the point is it does change and the world changes because the demands change. That's all.
Yeah. That's a really good point. You're talking, this whole thing reminds me about this need to, like, as we evolve, relationships, time, us, our needs, our interests, our skills even over time. Like that's the point about, we're talking so much about awareness, doing the like reassessment of it. And I know some people that'll do that monthly, quarterly. I'm a fan of taking a personal retreat, but awareness, I have this, I think about this in the book, and a friend of mine who also studies psychology mentioned after reading it, she's like, oh, I like how, and she pointed out a framework that I had not been that conscious of. She's like, it's about awareness and then intention and then action. And I really love that because, okay, lots and lots of awareness, but then it's about setting like, well, then what does matter to you? Does it mean more concerts? Does it mean traveling to concerts, which is the coolest combo ever? And you can combine your loves. Like you could be like, oh, I love chefs. Well, then going to the different Michelin star dinners in different parts of the world, or really fantastic parks that you want to visit around the world, whatever. So that's the intention, and then the action. So this is the part where, you know, the difference, you know, between people who are hoping to be successful and mostly people who are successful. It's like, what are you doing? You know, and that goes back again to my dear sweet mom, a lot of talk, not a lot of action. And let's then be conscious of, okay, back to time's ticking. You know, I have a friend who wants to start a business, and back to being busy, back to having kids, back to having just a full life, right? And she wants to make a transition from a busy career to starting her business. And I've done that. I've done that twice, and it's not for the faint of heart, you know? Sometimes you need to be thrown in the water, but, you know, I think that part of the whole conversation there is like, I'm going to say this, and I don't mean to be snarky about it or unkind or insensitive, but like, what are you waiting for? Like, at the end of it all, and we all know, like the Christie I told you about, walking through Home Depot for her light bulbs, 42. We all know of stories that people died prematurely. And so I don't even think we need the threat of death to rankle us. I think sometimes it's just like, what about the life you're living? Back to self-worth, back to how precious this time is. We've been gifted this time. And who are we to not try to make the very most of it? And I don't mean exhaustingly. I don't mean stuffing every single day and every Thursday and Friday and Saturday night with concerts, even though you might love that. But like, this is about, why would we not go after the dream? Not even if it's hard, especially if it's hard. Because we get to demonstrate to ourselves that we do hard things, and sometimes we skin our knees, but we get right back up. Or that we win sometimes, and then we revel in that, and then inspire other people. And so, God, the full variety pack of life, right? Like, let's go out there and get it. Like, it's here now, and it might not be tomorrow. It's so valuable. And I mean, I say this, and I'm like needing to hear it back at me too, because I do a very similar postponement, you know. But we all need the reminder. This is temporary, so let's act like it.
I feel like I've always had a different perspective on death because I've had the ability, and I've talked about this on the show before, but I've had the honor and ability to do all 4 eulogies for my grandparents. And so I was extremely close. I'm the oldest grandson of my mom's side of the family and my dad's, but I'm the oldest grandson in an Italian Catholic family with lots of grandchildren. And I had the honor of doing my grandmother's eulogy first, and she was probably the closest person I've ever lost, and then got to stand up. And I ended up, the eulogy I did was a letter my mother had written that all of the siblings agreed was a perfect symbol of honoring her. And so, but the perspective, there's 2 points really quickly on eulogies, and that is never, ever in the 4 have I gotten up and talked about their life's work. Always did I talk about them as someone I loved, someone that loved me, someone that loved other people, how they loved, how they showed love, what they did in their community, what they were like as a family person, memories we had. Very seldom did they revolve around anything any of them did in a career. In fact, my grandmothers didn't have careers for the most part. They were not career women. My one grandmother was in the military prior to getting out. But the point I'm getting at is it provides a perspective when you stand in front of a room and you honor someone. There's nothing closer to death than seeing them in the coffin, in the wake, and then celebrating them. But just having the perspective of remembering what it felt like, what I talked about, that's my awakening moment. That's one of the things that's so powerful to me about death, is that I want to be remembered for the things that I remembered about those people, not the things that we spend most of our time doing every day.
Wow, what a profound experience that you've had. I love that you shared it, and you reminded me of the best definition I've ever come across about legacy, which is a transmission of personal values. You know, it's like the ways you made people feel. It is about your character, and it's kind of like your brand, but with the absence of the bells and whistles and how many cars you drove. And so I love that, and I think that's part of the conversation here around. Sometimes it's helpful to think about, like, how do you want to be remembered? If you could pick a word that you'd want chiseled into your tombstone. 1 is often hard, so I like to say 10. How do you want to be described? There's an exercise in the book about your eulogy, like write your eulogy about how you think it would honestly be written today based on the life you're living, and then write your ideal one, and then there's a gap there. So then how do you want to maybe rectify that, if at all? And then one more tidbit, because I can't resist the research. You know how we were talking a little about how, like, we need a bit of a little, like, poke in the ribs to get moving on things sometimes. Like, you need the negative motivation. There is research about how we are often more motivated to avoid a negative legacy than to create a positive one. We're weird. So, okay, fine. Well, we can work with that. If that means maybe your task, anybody listening, is to sit down over the beverage of your choice and think about how you don't want to be described when you're lying there in the casket or, powdered up in your urn or whatever. And think about that. And then obviously the flip side is, live the life and, like, earn the right to be described the way that you yearn to be described.
Earn that dash. You got to earn that dash, right? Yeah. Otherwise we're not really living. I love your message, Jodi. It's been an honor to have you on the show. I really enjoyed. Sometimes, I get a book. We've done a year and a half of this podcast, and we've had a great number of wonderful guests. And I go through a lot of books, but yours was definitely one of the best ones that not only laid out a great idea, but it was backed by a ton of research, and then there's a lot of action. You did not hesitate to hold back on things that people can actually do. You didn't save it for something else they can do later. They know they can get you, and you can do a workshop, and there's lots of other stuff you can do, but you gave them enough to make their life better with this book. And I think that's something to be proud of and something that I enjoyed reading, and I saw it and appreciated it. Having published a book, I know what goes into it. This was really good. So for the listeners, this is a book you buy. It's a book that you read. It's a book that you share. And hopefully everyone around you can be living the life they always imagined. And Jodi, how do they find you? How do they get more? Where do they find your book? What do they do?
Oh, well, thank you for asking, but mostly thank you for that incredible compliment. Coming from you, it really means a lot. And I don't want to let that go. That's just, I feel heart filled. And I can be found over at 4000mondays.com. Everything's there. There's a there's a Monday morning calculator that if you don't want to do the math, the book stuff's there. You only die once, but yeah, 4000 Mondays. So thank you for asking.
And for those of you that don't know, if you're watching, this is what the book looks like. I have it. This is good. There are lots of markings in this. It's been beat up. So
signs of love.
Yes, that is it. And that would be the word I would choose. If I only got one, love would be my word. So thank you, Jodi. It's been an honor. Thank you so much for being a part of our show. And everybody go buy her book and find her.
You're wonderful. Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed this podcast. If you liked it, there's more where this one came from. Click here and enjoy some more.